Hello again, and welcome to the Money Man Mike Show, where we talk all things real estate. I'm your host, Michael Thayer, and this is my commitment to you, to cut through all of the confusion and sensationalized headlines by effectively explaining in simple terms that you can understand the important strategies, current topics, and trends that you need to know before you buy, sell, or refinance your home. On this episode, we're talking about, is this another housing bubble or crash? This video is a brief overview of our complete 4-part series that will absolutely blow your mind. I was both a lender and a real estate investor during the 2008 housing crisis. I know firsthand exactly what happened, how loans were being approved, and witnessed the fallout from the loans that were made. People are constantly asking me, is this another housing bubble? When is the next crash gonna happen? What about property values? Are they gonna crash? Is this a good time to buy or sell? What about these crazy high mortgage rates? Will mortgage rates continue to go up, or will they move back down in 2023? What happens if there's a recession? It's no wonder why people get stressed out when they start thinking about real estate and the mortgage market and trying to make sense of all the noise and chaos. On this episode, we're going to address some of those mind-bending questions and the common misconceptions and show you the facts to explain why the current market today is nothing like the 2008 market. We're going to start by covering these 5 points: the 2008 housing crisis, quick facts, and timeline, the shocking start that you probably never heard about, 8 key contributing factors, a then versus now comparison, home values and the role they played. We understand that the market is constantly evolving, which is why we share the following information with you. This show was written in December 2022 and recorded in January 2023. You can depend on us to provide regular updates and insights to help you navigate the constantly changing market with confidence. Many people think they know what happened in 2008. The truth is, they really do not know the full story behind the 2008 housing crisis and financial collapse. This is the reason why so many people have uncertainty about the current housing market and the possibility of another 2008 housing crisis happening again. As we address these common misconceptions and educate you on the differences between then versus now, by the end of this video, you will understand why we are not heading for another housing crisis. While many of you believe the housing crisis lasted only 3 to 5 years, it was actually the result of a 10 to 15 year effort to increase home ownership. To make sense of why we're not heading for another housing bubble or crisis, it's essential to understand the root cause of the 2008 housing crisis. Additionally, identify the key contributing factors that undermined the entire system and led to the collapse of the housing and financial markets is absolutely necessary. Finally, determine if those same contributing factors still exist in the current market is the most crucial aspect to understand. What I'm about to share with you is not politically motivated and solely based on facts. The foundation for the housing collapse was started in 1994 and officially enacted in 1995 with a presidential directive to Congress to increase home ownership. The director of HUD then formed a 50-plus member team comprised of private and government agencies to devise innovative ways to achieve this goal in the U.S. and urged banks and lenders to develop novel new ways to make more loans. President Bill Clinton's initiative to make the dream of home ownership a reality for all Americans. The initiative was set into motion when President Clinton signed into law the Community Reinvestment Act in 1995. This article is sourced from the Clinton White House archives, and the link to this and numerous other articles are provided in the full 4-part series. Or go to Google and type in this: President Clinton's directive to Congress to increase home ownership, and you'll find numerous articles and relevant information. The Community Reinvestment Act is also why so many new homes were built during that time. The director of HUD, or the Housing and Urban Development, the National Association of Home Builders, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors signed an agreement in 1999 to build an additional 1 million new homes over the next 10 years. During the first 18 months, they were 20% ahead of schedule, with over 180,000 more homes built than expected. That is precisely why I describe the time leading up to the crash as the build it and they will come mentality. This is another excellent article written by Peter Coy with Bloomberg.com. Peter wrote, "Add President Clinton to the long list of people who deserve a share of the blame for the housing bubble and burst. A recently re-exposed document shows that his administration went to ridiculous lengths to increase the national home ownership rate. It promoted paper-thin down payments and pushed for ways to get lenders to give more mortgages to first-time home buyers with shaky financing and income. It's clear now that the erosion of the lending standards pushed prices up by increasing demand that later led to a wave of defaults by people who should have never bought a home in the first place. Knowing what we know now about the housing crisis, the earnest language in this document seems faintly ridiculous. Here's an excerpt, read it closely, and you will see the seeds of disaster being planted. For many potential home buyers, the lack of cash available to accumulate the required down payment and closing cost is the major impediment to purchasing a house. Other households do not have a sufficient available income to make the monthly payments on mortgages financed at market interest rates for standard loan terms like 30-year fixed mortgages. Back to the article. Financing strategies fueled by the creativity and resources of the private and public sectors should address both of these financial barriers to home ownership. Note the praise for creativity. That kind of creativity is stretching boundaries that we can use less of, said Joseph Manson, an esteemed finance professor at several major universities. And he goes on to put it well, and I quote, "It strikes me as reckless to promote home sales to individuals in such constrained financial predicaments." Did you have a similar reaction after hearing or reading that? If not, you surely will after watching the complete 4-part series. Along with following and subscribing to this channel, we'll provide you with a better perspective on the market and future trends. It's easy to overlook these two facts, but they offer valuable insight into how people were analyzing investments and risk before the 2008 housing crisis. Significant profits were made in the stock market between 1995 and 2000, when the NASDAQ increased by 400%. This was after the dot-com tech crash that peaked in March 2000, and people were on the hunt for the next big opportunity. Speculative investing gained traction during this period, and the build it and they will come mindset prevailed in new home construction. Consequently, building was based on speculation, and the number of homes construction far surpassed the actual demand from buyers or investors. I like to describe the housing crisis as the perfect storm that gradually intensified, and once it gained momentum, it was unstoppable. Unfortunately, by the time people recognized the looming danger, it was already too late. The intent to expand home ownership was good. The effort to make it happen went too far. It lacked the necessary guidance and constraints to prevent the crash from occurring. During that time, the focus was on increasing home ownership rates by any means possible. As the saying goes, too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. Think of it like the Oprah Winfrey Show, where she gives away big gifts and cars to her audience.
Everybody in the audience, now listen to me carefully, is being given a special package, and I don't want you to open it. Do not open it. Cameras are on you, so do not open until I tell you. All right, open your boxes. Open your boxes. 1, 2, 3.
You get a house, you get a house, everybody gets a house. Everybody got a house. Literally, if you still had a pulse and could sign loan papers, there was a loan program for nearly anyone who wanted to buy a house, regardless of their financial situation. After the program's initial success, combined with the lack of oversight and limitations, Wall Street banks and lenders continued to expand their approval parameters. These expansions allowed more borrowers to qualify for mortgages, including those previously considered to be high credit risk, and ultimately led to an uncontrollable spiral of events. During the 4-part series, we closely examined these 8 key contributing factors that undermined the system during the housing crisis. You can pick any one of these categories on this chart. The fact remains the same. The numbers are polar opposites for now versus then. The first item on the list, unemployment and job losses. Over 8 million jobs were lost during the housing crisis versus a super hot job market in our current condition today. Subprime lending was prevalent back then versus being non-existent now. New home construction and inventories have been cut in half from the oversupply of homes that we experienced leading up to the housing crisis. Mortgage delinquencies were off the chart back then and since have dropped by 2/3. Foreclosures hit record lows at the beginning of 2023. Even though the recent foreclosure rate has ticked up slightly, that was expected, given that the COVID moratorium on foreclosures has recently expired. During the 4-part series, we'll delve deeper into the top 3 factors, and they are: number 1, underwriting and regulation changes with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or the CFPB. Number 2, new home construction. Number 3, home values. These 3 topics alone will help you truly understand the differences between then versus now. And more importantly, whether any of these key factors are still present in the current market today. By listening to the full series, you'll gain a comprehensive understanding of why now is a great time to buy. Okay, people, stay with me on this next one. It's critical and contains a lot of information that we're going to cover quickly. To ensure that the housing crisis doesn't happen again, a comprehensive review was conducted analyzing all of the factors that contributed to the failure. In July 2010, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Financial Protection Act was passed, amending several existing rules and created many new standalone provisions and brought sweeping reform to the financial sector. 1 year later, in 2011, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, also known as the CFPB, completely transformed the industry, along with bans on subprime, Alt-A, risky arms, pay option loans, and many others. The CFPB introduced the ability to repay and qualified mortgage rule, also known as ATR and QM. These rules require creditors to make a reasonable and good faith determination of a consumer's ability to repay a residential mortgage according to its terms. Prior to the CFPB, the loan approval process focused solely on assessing whether the borrower satisfied the necessary criteria to be eligible for a loan, without focusing or factoring in any potential risk that could emerge after the loan was granted. During the 4-part series, we covered the critical role that these components played and why we're not heading for another housing crisis. This chart illustrates the imbalance between the supply of homes and the demand from home buyers or household growth. Leading up to the housing crisis, new home construction, illustrated by the orange columns, far exceeded the household growth, illustrated by the blue columns. This chart also projects the current housing shortage will get worse in the coming years due to the insufficient number of homes being built. In comparison to 2008, the supply and demand numbers have completely flipped. We had too many homes back then and not enough buyers. Now, we do not have enough homes. You often hear it's a buyer's or seller's market. But what does that really mean? It's really the basic principle of supply and demand. During the housing crisis, there were too many homes for sale and not enough buyers. This is referred to as a buyer's market, which is represented on the top half of this chart in gray. When the number of homes listed on the market for sale, which is the supply, exceeds the number of home buyers who are actively looking, which is demand, then home prices will either remain flat or even decline until the market finds balance between the supply and demand. Compared to a seller's market that we've been in for the last several years, and represented on the bottom half of this chart in green, is when the number of homes available for sale on the market is less than the number of home buyers in the market who are actively looking to purchase a home. Therefore, the increase in demand and not enough supply is what increases home prices. In addition, the builders who survived the housing crisis altered their business practices, resulting in a slower building process that we're seeing today and contributing to the shortage of homes. Home prices will start to increase again by late 2023 or 2024. However, the projected price increases is likely to be more in line with the historical appreciation rate of 3 to 5% annually. The data illustrated on this chart is identical to the data that we just reviewed on the previous chart. The only differences is the visual presentation. The vertical columns represent the number of homes available during a specific year, with the corresponding year listed below the column. The black dotted line in the middle represents a balanced market or an adequate supply of homes to meet the demand from buyers. The green columns in the center represent the excess building that occurred during the housing crisis. The red dotted line represents where the market supply is currently and how far we are from a normal balanced market. This chart shows the sharp contrast in the number of homes available now in our current market and the excess supply of homes illustrated by the green columns during the housing crisis. In the latter part of 2022, despite a significant market slowdown, there is not an oversupply of homes. The new housing crisis today is the shortage of available homes. In a recent article from Realtor.com, it states, "The nation is still suffering from a housing shortage that has reached crisis proportions." This post from Forbes.com is spot on and widely echoed amongst industry experts. In summary, we've experienced a complete pivot from the White House and congressional policies to increase lending and home ownership to now where a bank must prove a borrower has the ability to repay a mortgage before issuing a loan approval, without any of the exotic or subprime loan programs that were prevalent during the housing crisis. With the current historically high levels of home equity, there's a greater sense of security in the housing market that was absent during the housing crisis. This significantly helps decrease the likelihood of another market crash, similar to the one that occurred in 2008. Active foreclosures have dropped by more than 1 million during the peak of the housing crisis in 2010, down to 151,000. This is another substantial difference between then versus now. According to a recent report by Black Knight, 8% of new mortgages obtained during 2022 are now underwater. Most media outlets were quick to report the decline in home prices, and 8% of mortgages were now underwater. The Black Knight article was nearly 3 pages long, and chances are you did not hear much more than the headlines or maybe 15 to 30 seconds worth of commentary. This is precisely why I continue to emphasize you cannot fall victim to a headline. Considering the market deceleration that we witnessed during 2022, that report from Black Knight was entirely predictable and makes complete sense. News headlines and social media rants failed to mention the prevalent bidding wars for homes and that buyers were paying more than the list price. According to NAR, the National Association of Realtors, in June 2022, nearly 60% of all homes sold for more than the list price. This trend persisted throughout 2022. In fact, 22% of all homes sold in October 2022 sold for more than list price. Therefore, the Black Knight report should not come as a surprise to anybody. Buyers who paid above the list price were already facing a negative equity situation before they even closed on their new home. In addition, buyers who opted for loans that offered 100% financing like VA or USDA, along with FHA loans combined with down payment assistance, possessed little to no equity the day they closed. The Black Knight report specifically referenced low down payment loans within their report. The majority of the news headlines and social media rants failed to mention any of this. However, this will soon be old news as home values have started to stabilize, and we will start to see increasing values late 2023 and 2024. When prospective buyers realize mortgage rates are declining, they are likely to resume their search for a new home. The multiple offers on homes will also resume. However, the current price reductions that sellers are given, along with paying some of a buyer's closing costs, will cease to exist when the buyer traffic returns. Remember, the new housing crisis is a shortage of available homes. It's all about supply and demand, and we're short on supply. This type of information is rarely reported in the news, but recently released by 4 credible sources: Case-Shiller, Black Knight, CoreLogic, and the Federal Housing Finance Agency, also known as FHFA. All 4 sources concur that home values show signs of stabilizing and beginning to correct. This is likely due to the meaningful drop in mortgage rates since November 2022. The current housing market offers a fantastic chance to buy a home at a more affordable price, which was a rare occurrence in recent years. However, this opportunity will soon dissipate as mortgage rates continue to decrease and buyers return to the market. During the COVID pandemic, a new norm was created: working from home. Over the past 2 to 3 years, there was a surge in demand from buyers seeking new homes that could accommodate both their family and their new work from home lifestyles. This is yet another reason why we expect that future home appreciation rates will be more in line with the national historical averages, which typically ranges between 3 to 5% annually, with some markets seeing between 5 to 10% annually. I'm going to start by framing this a little bit for you. When you go shopping at the store or online, and you see the red sales signs or the 50% off that pulls you in, the question you should ask, 50% off of what? If the initial price of the product was artificially inflated, can you truly consider it a sale? Or are you simply paying what the original list price should have been from the very beginning? So when you hear home prices are declining, you should ask, declining from what? The year-over-year equity gains during the third quarter of 2022 averaged 34,300 nationally, which was a decline from the second quarter equity gain of 60,200. Despite the news reports and social media rants that home listing prices are declining, the average home value still increased by 94,500 during the exact same period year over year. Nationally, home values have increased on average by 60% over the last 5 years. 60%. Some areas have doubled. Since 1991, home values have increased by 288%. In simple numbers, let's say you bought a house for $100,000 5 years ago. That house increased in value to $160,000. Yes, home values have declined a little in some areas. So your home is now worth $150,000 instead of $160,000. You're still up $50,000. What other investment have you made a 50% in return on over the last 5 years? Does your 401k or stock portfolio lose money at times? Yes it does. It's all a cycle. Home values are stabilizing and values will start increasing again by the end of 2023. Even though the news headlines and social media rants may have suggested that the sky was falling, it wasn't. It's important to remember that any headline taken out of context has the potential to sound alarming or negative. This is precisely why I emphasize you cannot fall victim to a headline. So I'm preparing you now. When the 2022 fourth quarter numbers are released, you're going to hear similar headlines. Home prices are declining. It's important to recognize that the current downturn is merely a short-term hiccup, and we expect home prices will start increasing again by the end of 2023. Okay, let's recap the show on what we've covered. First, we discussed the 2008 housing crisis and how it started. Then the presidential push to increase home ownership. Then we identified 8 key contributing factors that were present back in 2008 that are not present now. The fundamental changes to underwriting, new laws and regulations that were created. Home equity is significantly higher now versus then. If by chance you're still uncertain or possibly have more questions, or maybe you're a numbers person looking for more detailed, comprehensive understanding of the events that impacted the 2008 market and why the current market is different, then the 4-part comprehensive series is perfect for you. I highly recommend watching it. You'll be glad you did. Would you like us to discuss a particular topic on the show that's piqued your interest or curiosity? If so, a request link can be found in the show description box below. Every one of our shows are presented in the same credible and easy to understand approach, making our shows perfect for nearly anyone to learn from. So be sure to click on the like, subscribe, and follow buttons to ensure that you receive our new show notifications, along with our market updates to keep you informed as things are constantly changing. That's it, people. It's a wrap. Thanks for watching. The links to contact us or request a show topic, along with our social media channels and podcast platforms, are all listed in the show description box below. Otherwise, please click the like, subscribe, and follow button. Until next time, have a great day.